Every cyclist loves coffee. Maybe a little too much. But did you know that coffee can actually improve your performance and speed on the bike? Well, today we're going to go through how that caffeine actually affects us and how we can best use it when we head out on the bike or do any of those tough training sessions. Let's get into it. How does the caffeine in coffee, or however you're consuming your caffeine, work? Well, there's one system in the brain and it's all down to a hormone called adenosine. Basically, throughout an average day, adenosine builds up and up and up and up, makes us feel more tired at the end of the day. We go to sleep, adenosine levels drop back right down to a sort of minimal level and then start increasing again the next day. What caffeine actually does is blocks those adenosine receptors in the brain so that the adenosine can't get into those, therefore making us feel less tired. It's common as well that we have a sort of caffeine crash once that caffeine's started to wear off, because adenosine is still building up in the brain, it's just it can't get into a receptor because there's caffeine there instead. So when that caffeine does start to wear off, all the adenosine that's been building up then sort of floods those receptors. So caffeine doesn't actually make you feel more alert, it just makes you feel less tired. What also happens sometimes if you're a habitual coffee or caffeine consumer is that more receptors appear in the brain. So therefore, you require more caffeine to block those receptors to kind of get that same boost you would feel from that caffeine. That then also means if you stop drinking coffee or caffeine, you feel even worse because all that adenosine is going into all those extra receptors, making you feel worse, giving you a headache, all those sorts of things we feel when we haven't had a coffee or caffeine boost for a little while. Coffee and caffeine can also release dopamine within the brain, which is just a happiness hormone. That's why we get that, warm, tingly feeling after we've had that cup of coffee in the morning. So that's how caffeine works. It doesn't actually make us feel more alert, it actually makes us feel less tired and a little bit happier. But how can we use this to perform better on the rides we go out on any races you have, or just on those tougher workouts? Caffeine has been one of those substances that's been studied quite a lot in the scientific community because one, it's legal, and two, quite a lot of us drink it or consume it. There's been plenty of studies done on how caffeine can affect your time trial performance, and even over a distance such as 4 kilometers or 5 kilometers, it's been shown to have a positive impact, so that's only going to be exacerbated over longer distances. It does this just by helping us increase the amount of power we can put out on the bike. In one of the 4 kilometer time trials, the group of participants that took the caffeine instead of the group of people that didn't take anything and took a placebo actually increased their power output by around about 8% over the course of the time trial. So quite a big improvement in performance. It's used by lots of professional sports teams as well as cyclists as well. There's been also some research done on if you're a habitual caffeine drinker, and as we sort of discussed at the start, that can reduce the effectiveness of caffeine in the brain. Does that affect your performance during a time trial as well? And there's actually been some evidence to show that it doesn't matter if you have caffeine quite a lot, if you're kind of used to it, the boost in performance you get from taking some sort of caffeine or coffee is still going to help boost your performance just as much as it would do if you're not a regular coffee or caffeine drinker. Scientists then wondered if taking like a caffeine supplement, so just sort of caffeine powder, would have a different impact to if you consumed all that caffeine from coffee. And they actually found in that study that there was no difference whatsoever. So really, where you get your caffeine from doesn't matter, whether it's from carbohydrate gels with caffeine inside them, whether it's from caffeine powder, or whether it's from a coffee you take pre-ride. So that's the science. It's quite obvious. Caffeine can help improve our performance during time trials or any kind of sessions where we're pushing quite hard. The same has been shown for running too. But how much caffeine do we need? How much coffee does that mean we then need to drink? And how long before we go out on the bike or start a workout do we need to drink that caffeine for it to have a positive impact? Let me know down in the comments below. Are you a coffee drinker or are you a tea drinker? How do you get the majority of your caffeine? This is probably going to cause some arguments, so please, no arguing. I myself love a good coffee, but I know there's plenty of people who love tea instead. So how much caffeine do you need to consume? Well, in a lot of the studies, the amount that was given to the participants was, well, there's actually a range. So there's a range from anywhere from sort of 2 milligrams of caffeine per kilo of body weight up to 5 milligrams of caffeine per kilo of body weight. They don't actually need an absolute ton of it. Too much of it is probably going to have an adverse effect, and I don't know, it might cause you to have maybe an accident out on the bike. But a coffee or two is all you would need to help increase your performance while you're out. And when should you consume it? Well, the research kind of shows anywhere between half an hour and an hour before you do the time trial or before you head out on the bike or do your session. That just gives the caffeine enough time to have an effect. Any time after sort of an hour, the effect of the caffeine does start to wear off, but you're still going to have some kind of benefit. So how can you incorporate that into your training? Well, my advice would just be on any really tough sessions you have, or on any races, or on any kind of rides where you want to be able to perform fairly well, is have a coffee or two before you head out, around about an hour before. There's not really much use in trying to use caffeine to boost your performance if you're just doing a nice steady ride and don't necessarily need it. Although a lot of us drink coffee every day anyway, so we probably have that impact and boost in performance anyway. Caffeine can, though, have some adverse side effects. So what you don't want to do is drink caffeinated drinks, so coffee and tea, too late in the day, because this can affect your sleep and then therefore affect your recovery. Caffeine has what we call a half-life, so same as any radioactive substance, it's just the amount of time it takes that caffeine to reduce by half in the bloodstream. For caffeine, that's around about 6 hours. So if you have some coffee or any sort of caffeine at 12 o'clock at midday, at 6 o'clock in the evening, you have half that amount of caffeine in your bloodstream. If you double that, you get the quarter life. So if you have a coffee at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, that means at 12 o'clock at night when you're trying to go to sleep, you still have a quarter of that amount of caffeine in your system, which can be quite a lot if you've had a very strong coffee. So my advice would be to keep caffeine, your caffeine intake, before 12 in the afternoon. That way you're sort of at much less chance of impacting your sleep and therefore your recovery. There's no use having, a coffee before a ride at 5 in the evening to boost your performance on the bike, but then you can't sleep very well and recover from that session anyway. So it just negates the benefit of having that caffeine in the first place. Even if you're one of those people that's like, I can have a coffee before bed and go to sleep fine and not feel anything. That might be the case, but the quality of your sleep, of your REM sleep it's called, that really deep sleep, is going to be impacted. There's been lots of research to show, even though you might fall asleep, and it's the same with alcohol, alcohol can knock you out, your quality of sleep is going to be impacted, and therefore your recovery from any exercise you've done will be impacted as well. So there you have it. Hopefully you found today's video interesting. Please do, as I said, subscribe below for new interesting videos every single week. Hopefully now you understand the benefits of coffee, maybe some of the drawbacks and how you can use it to best improve your performance on the bike. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video.